The sun was slowly setting behind the horizon, bathing the city park in a golden, almost fairy tale light. A special stillness of the weekend evening hung in the air, intertwined with the distant hum of the city and the ringing laughter of children playing nearby. Max sat on an old wooden bench that seemed to remember his own childhood, holding a cold bottle of root beer, covered in condensation droplets. The light evening breeze ruffled his dark hair, which was long overdue for a haircut, and his eyes thoughtfully watched the squealing crowd of kids chasing a colorful ball nearby. He was 30 years old. It was that age when the first youthful illusions had already dissipated, but the cynicism of maturity hadn't yet fully taken hold. Life wasn't perfect. Who could boast of a perfect life? But Max felt more or less settled, standing on his own 2 feet. He had a job, he had plans, he had people he could count on. Next to him sat Alex. Not just a friend, but his best friend, one of the few who had been with him through all stages of life, starting back in school. Alex, as always, was the center of attention, even if that attention was just one listener, Max. He was animatedly gesturing with his hands, telling another, probably slightly exaggerated but still amusing story about his failed attempt at cooking dinner. Alex always had a talent for turning everyday awkwardnesses into epic comedic narratives. And I'm telling you, Max, that soup. It looked like a real radioactive substance from Chernobyl. The color was so unnatural. And the bubbles. It was actually bubbling. Alex laughed heartily, throwing his head back, his signature contagious laughter echoing through the evening park. His light, almost blue eyes, which always sparkled with a lively fire, now shone with amusement. In moments like these, Alex seemed the embodiment of lightness and carefree spirit. Max smiled. It was a genuine, heartfelt laugh that Alex always brought out. Alex was just like that, easygoing, incredibly charismatic, able to find positivity or at least a reason for a joke in any situation, no matter how difficult or awkward. He was the sun that lit up Max's life, prone to a certain melancholy and excessive seriousness. Their friendship had lasted for 15 years. It all started in 7th grade, with an absolutely foolish act that, however, united them for many years. As he recalled, it was during a biology lesson, and they, with joint efforts and characteristic teenage silliness, managed to put a live, though small, frog into the drawer of their strict teacher's desk. The teacher's reaction was stormy, their reprimand well-deserved, but the shared criminal past created an invisible but strong bond. Since then, they had been, as they say, inseparable. They went through all stages of growing up together. They studied for college admissions together, spending days buried in textbooks, although Alex, unlike Max, always found time for fun and could cram for exams the night before, which Max both admired and annoyed him. They got into the same university, Max for a computer science major, Alex for design. They shared college life, dorm hangouts, late-night talks about everything, first awkward attempts at courting girls, first passionate but, as it turned out, fleeting romances. They supported each other through the first serious disappointments, whether it was a failed exam, a broken relationship, or just the feeling of being lost in the vast world of adults. They dreamed together. They dreamed of a future that seemed so close and so promising. They dreamed of successful careers, of travel. He remembered wanting to hitchhike to the ocean, of their own homes, of happy families. Their dreams were shared, their plans intertwined. Alex was always the idea generator, often adventurous ones, and Max was the one who tried to give those ideas some real form, to ground them. They complemented each other, like two halves of a whole. "You're hopeless," Max said, smiling and sipping the root beer that had already lost its chill. "But you know, I'm really glad you're in my life. Without you, it would probably be not as much fun and a little boring." Alex nudged his shoulder, their hands touching for a moment. In that simple gesture, there were so many years of shared history, so much unspoken understanding. "Oh, come on," Alex winked. "You'd find a way to entertain yourself even without me. You're our intellectual. But I admit, we're a perfect team. Best brothers forever." Max nodded. He truly believed that. Alex wasn't just a friend to him. He was a part of himself, a family member, almost a brother, with whom he didn't have to share parental attention. They shared everything, their deepest secrets, their boldest dreams, their most painful disappointments, plans that sometimes seemed unattainable. Max couldn't even imagine that one day this seemingly unbreakable bond could crack, like thin glass under excessive pressure, shattering into sharp, dangerous fragments. At that moment, sitting in the golden rays of the evening sun in the park, the future seemed clear and shared. a future where they would always be together. A year later, Max's life began to change rapidly. Not abruptly, but noticeably. He worked at a small but ambitious IT company, and his diligence, analytical mind, and ability to learn quickly did not go unnoticed. He had recently received a promotion, becoming a manager of one of the key projects. It was a significant step forward. His salary increased, giving him more financial freedom, but along with it came added responsibility, long working hours, and a certain amount of pressure. He often stayed late at the office, took work home. His schedule became more intense. Alex's life, on the other hand, remained stagnant, if not slightly regressing. He continued to work as a freelance designer. At first, he liked the freedom, the ability to plan his own day, choose projects. But the reality turned out to be less romantic. Clients were inconsistent, orders were often canceled, and sometimes they paid peanuts. In addition, freelancing required constant searching for clients, self-promotion, which, despite Alex's outward sociability, was difficult for him. He was a creative person but didn't really like to sell himself. "You have no idea how much these clients get to me, Max," Alex grumbled one evening as they sat in their favorite, long-familiar coffee shop. Patrons changed, but they remained, like part of the furniture. One wants a full logo and branding for $100 and make it like Nike. Another demands 5 revisions to an already approved design for the same meager price. And everyone thinks they're a great artist and critic. "Maybe I'll just quit this garbage and become a taxi driver? At least there you know how much you'll earn per hour." Max nodded sympathetically, stirring sugar into his coffee. He knew how much Alex loved his work, how enthusiastically he talked about his ideas, about new design tools. But he also saw him struggling with financial difficulties, how fatigue and disappointment accumulated in his eyes. Alex never directly asked for money, which Max sometimes offered, but his constant complaints about lack of orders and low fees spoke volumes about his financial situation. Max wanted to help, not just lend money, which he sometimes did, but help systematically solve the problem. His company was currently looking for a talented designer to work on new projects. It was a stable job with a regular salary and benefits. It was exactly what Alex needed. "Listen, maybe I'll talk to my boss?" Max suggested, carefully choosing his words so as not to offend his friend's ego. "My company is looking for a designer. It's not freelance. I know you like freedom. But it's a stable salary, interesting projects, a good team. I think you'd adapt quickly there." Alex looked at him skeptically, his blue eyes losing their usual sparkle for a moment. "Are you serious? Office routine? Waking up at 8, spending the whole day in front of a screen in 4 walls? I don't like that, you know." "I know," Max replied. "But it could be temporary. Or maybe you'll like it. There are interesting tasks, not boring ones. And it will give you financial stability until you find more lucrative freelance projects." Alex thought about it. He looked out the window, where the evening lights were already coming on. Financial stability. It was tempting. Lately, he had truly been struggling to make ends meet. The constant uncertainty was exhausting. But working together? That's awkward, right? You're a manager there, and I'm just a designer. "Oh, come on," Max waved his hand. "That won't change anything between us. Work is work, and after work, we're friends. You know I'm not the type to abuse my position." Alex nodded. "Well, I'll think about it. Thanks, bro. You're always trying to save me." Max smiled. He genuinely wanted to help his friend. It seemed to him that he was doing a good deed, offering a helping hand in a difficult moment. He didn't notice the fleeting shadow that crossed Alex's gaze. The shadow of envy. Alex never admitted it directly, not even to himself. But Max's success irritated him. His stable income, his confidence in the future, his career growth. Alex considered himself no less talented, even more creative. But for some reason, he wasn't as lucky as Max. This thought, like a little worm, gnawed at him from within, turning sincere joy for his friend into a bitter feeling of his own inadequacy. Max's offer, while solving financial problems, at the same time put him in a position of being subordinate, the one who was helped. And that humbled him. But the need for money was stronger than pride. A few weeks later, Alex said he was ready to give it a try. Max was genuinely happy and immediately spoke to his supervisor. Thanks to Max's recommendation and Alex's portfolio, he was hired fairly quickly. At first, everything went well. Alex quickly fit in with the team. His creativity and unconventional approach to tasks were appreciated. He really was a talented designer. The company director even praised his work publicly a few times. It seemed like life was improving, and their friendship would become even stronger, now on a professional basis as well. But Max started noticing that Alex was making increasingly snide comments, especially when no one else was around. These were small phrases, dropped casually, but they left an unpleasant residue. "Well, of course, it's easy for you. You're the star here. Everyone loves you," Alex said once when Max told him about another successful project he was managing. "And I've just started. I'm a long way from your level. Just crumbs from the master's table for now." Max shrugged it off, attributing it to his friend's bad mood, fatigue, or difficulties adjusting to a new team. He didn't want to see anything more in those words. But such moments repeated themselves. Alex became increasingly irritable, especially when the conversation turned to Max's work, his achievements, his relationship with management. Instead of genuine joy, Max began to notice a hidden tension and some strange, cold light in his eyes. Cracks in their friendship were becoming more noticeable, although Max desperately tried not to see them. The tension built slowly but inevitably, like a storm cloud on the horizon. Alex had been working at the company for 6 months, but his adjustment, it seemed, wasn't going smoothly, at least internally. Outwardly, he remained the same charismatic guy who easily chatted with colleagues. But in his relationship with Max, there was a noticeable coolness. Their conversations became more formal, focused on work, and even then, they often devolved into veiled reproaches from Alex. Everything exploded during the preparation for a large, critically important project for the company, the development of a comprehensive mobile application for a solid international client. It was a flagship project, and its success depended on the reputation of Innovate IT, that was the name of Max's company, and its future prospects in the international market. Max headed the project team, managing the process from start to finish, from communicating with the client and drafting technical specifications to final testing and presentation. Alex was responsible for a critical part, user interface design, UI/UX. It was his chance to prove himself, to step out of the freelance shadow, to demonstrate his professional value in a large project. Max believed in him and had high hopes for him. Max worked day and night. The office became his second home. He checked every line of code, coordinated the smallest details of the technical specifications with the demanding international client, motivated the team, and solved the endless problems that arose during development. The pressure was immense, but he felt a sense of responsibility and wanted to prove he deserved his place. Alex, on the other hand, seemed strangely detached from the project. He was often absent from scheduled meetings, citing urgent matters. His designs came in late, and Max, reviewing them, noticed that the quality left much to be desired. This wasn't the Alex he knew, that talented designer whose freelance work he had once sincerely admired. "Alex, what's going on?" Max asked one late evening when they happened to be the last ones in the office. It had been dark outside for a long time. Only the monitors cast a pale light on their tired faces. "Are you having problems? You can do better. Much better. This project is important for all of us. For the company, for our reputation, and for you personally. This is your chance." Alex leaned back sharply in his office chair, his eyes dangerously glittering with hidden, and now almost open, anger and resentment. His face, usually pleasant, now looked contorted by some inner pain. "Important for you, you mean?" His voice was low, but filled with venom. "You're always the center of attention, aren't you, Max? The lead manager, the project savior, the boss's favorite. And me? Who am I? Just your assistant? Your junior colleague who you graciously threw a job to? Do you think I like being in your shadow? Constantly feeling indebted?" Max was stunned. He hadn't expected such blatant aggression, such an outburst of emotion. He sat as if doused with ice water, not knowing how to respond to this torrent of bitterness. I wanted to help you, Alex," he said quietly. His voice trembled with the pain of realizing that his good intentions had been so distorted. "You're my friend. I saw you struggling and wanted to." "Friend?" Alex smiled bitterly, almost dismissively. "You just wanted to feel like a hero who pulled poor Alex out of his pathetic hole. To satisfy your own ego, right? Look how successful and generous I am." These words hit Max harder than any physical blow. They shattered his image of Alex as a loyal friend, revealing instead an abyss of resentment, envy, and perhaps hatred. He remained silent, unable to find words to respond to such injustice, such a distorted reality. He truly had wanted to help. He had never felt like a hero. He simply saw a friend drowning and offered him a hand. And now that hand had been bitten off. That evening they parted without another word. Max walked out into the cool night, feeling empty inside. What was this? The end? The end of their years of friendship? He didn't want to believe it. Maybe Alex was just tired. Maybe the stress from the project had affected him. Max tried to find excuses, but Alex's words echoed in his head like a verdict. But the worst happened a week later. The project was in its final stages. Everything was ready for the client presentation. It was the moment of truth. Max, confident in his team and their work, opened the files on the server to do a final check and froze. The key project files, including all of Alex's interface designs, were corrupted or missing. It wasn't a system glitch. It was deliberate data deletion. Someone had accessed the server with a high level of access and destroyed part of the project. The presentation turned into a disaster. Max tried to explain the situation, to show the remaining parts, but without the key elements, it was impossible. The client was furious. Months of work, enormous efforts, the company's reputation, everything went down the drain. An internal investigation began. The IT department quickly identified who had access to the files at the critical time. The access level used for the deletion was Max's access, but he hadn't done it. It got worse. The log showed that Max's access was used from the computer Alex worked at. Furthermore, traces of his activity were found, indicating deliberate actions. It was Alex. He had done it. Using Max's access, which he himself had kindly provided to facilitate their joint work on the project, Alex had deliberately, consciously destroyed the result of months of work to sabotage his friend. When Max learned the official results of the investigation, he couldn't believe it. It was a shock. Pain. It was impossible to comprehend that the person he had known for so many years, whom he had relied on, could do something so despicable. This wasn't just a betrayal of friendship. It was a professional sabotage, a stab directly into the heart of his career, his reputation. Max was blamed for negligence, for not ensuring proper protection of his data, although he had simply trusted his friend. Although he wasn't fired, his contributions to the company were too significant. The promotion he had hoped for and which had been discussed was postponed indefinitely. It was painful, but nothing could compare to the pain of betrayal by his closest friend. The days after the project's failure and the discovery of Alex's involvement were like a blur. Max felt devastated, as if all his strength had been drained from him. He mechanically performed his duties at work, trying to deal with the aftermath of the disaster and regain the trust of colleagues and management. But inside, emptiness reigned, mixed with anger and pain from the realization of the betrayal. He needed to talk to Alex, to hear it all from him, to understand how deep this abyss went. Max found Alex at their favorite coffee shop. This time, they weren't sitting together at a table, laughing and exchanging news. Alex sat alone, in a corner by the window, avoiding his gaze. His posture was tense, his shoulders slumped. He looked guilty and worn out. Max walked over and quietly asked, "May I?" Alex just slowly nodded, without lifting his eyes. Max sat down across from him, at the same table that held memories of their happy moments. The first few minutes passed in silence. A heavy silence, filled with unsaid words, resentments, and pain. Alex fiddled with a mug of cold coffee, looking away. Max looked at him, trying to see his old friend in this face, but saw only a stranger, disfigured by some dark forces. "Why?" Max finally asked quietly. His voice was hoarse, trembling with suppressed pain. "Why did you do it, Alex? After everything. Why?" Alex was silent for a long time. It seemed like an eternity passed. He sighed deeply, as if steeling himself for something difficult. Slowly, he raised his blue eyes, and there was no spark of fun in them, only emptiness and the reflection of suffering. "I was tired, Max." His voice was barely audible, almost a whisper. "I was tired of being second. Always second. You're always ahead. Better job, higher salary, success. Everyone loves you, respects you. The boss shakes your hand. And me? Who am I? Just your poor freelance friend who you generously threw a job to. Even here, at your company, you're the star, and I'm just one of many." He spoke monotonously, as if recounting someone else's story. There was no remorse in his words, only bitterness and exhaustion. "I thought," he continued, avoiding Max's gaze, "if you failed, if you lost your sparkle, maybe then I'd be noticed. Maybe then I'd get a chance. a chance to step out of your shadow. Max felt an unbearable pain constrict his chest, as if someone had grabbed his heart with an icy hand. This was worse than he could have imagined. It wasn't a fleeting emotion, not a mistake. It was a deliberate decision, born of deep, hidden envy. "You could have talked to me, Alex," Max said. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he tried to hold them back. "As friends, you could have told me it was hard for you, how you felt. We could have tried to figure it out. I I would never have thought you felt that way. I just wanted to help. I thought we celebrated each other's successes together." "Celebrated?" Alex smiled bitterly again. "It's easy to celebrate when you're on top. Try celebrating when you're constantly falling. I looked at you and felt worthless. Your help only emphasized how much better you were than me, how much I was nobody without you." "That's not true," Max said firmly. "You're talented. You're smart. You have so many ideas. I always admired you." "Admired? Or pitted?" Alex interrupted. This conversation was pointless. They were speaking different languages. Alex saw Max as an enemy, the source of his failures, while Max saw him as a friend he genuinely loved and tried to help. The wall between them was insurmountable. "You chose betrayal," Max concluded. His voice trembled again, but this time with anger and final realization. "You didn't just destroy the project. You destroyed everything between us. Everything we built for 15 years. Alex didn't respond. He just lowered his head, looking at his cold coffee. In his silence, there was shame and exhaustion, but no real remorse. He seemed too absorbed in his own pain to grasp the magnitude of what he had done. Max slowly stood up from the table. He looked at Alex one last time, trying to remember him as he was before this moment, not distorted by envy, not a traitor. But that image was dissolving, replaced by the bitter reality. "Goodbye, Alex," Max said quietly. Alex didn't lift his head. He didn't respond. Max turned and walked out of the coffee shop. He left behind not just Alex, but a part of his life. A friendship that ended not because of a fight, not because of distance, but because of betrayal. This was the end. He knew it with absolute certainty. Their shared history, their dreams, their plans for the future, it all shattered in an instant, leaving only sharp pain and emptiness. The following months were perhaps the most difficult in Max's life. The pain of the betrayal didn't subside. It remained deep inside, like a splinter. At work, he had to put in considerable effort to regain trust. The project was partially salvaged, thanks to the incredible efforts of the team and Max's personal dedication, but the company suffered financial and reputational losses. Max had to take on some of the responsibility, and although his position wasn't affected, the feeling of failure and disappointment lingered. But the most painful part was personal. In the evenings, sitting in the empty apartment that used to be filled with laughter and conversations with Alex, Max couldn't shake off the thoughts of what had happened. He replayed the moments of their friendship in his memory, trying to understand when exactly everything had gone wrong. Were there any signs earlier that he had ignored? Could he have done something differently? Was he somehow to blame for Alex suffering so much from envy? These questions tormented him like an endless nightmare. He felt guilty, confused, betrayed. He couldn't understand how a person he had known for so many years, whom he had relied on, could act so cruelly. He tried talking to some mutual acquaintances, but most of them knew about the situation at work, and the conversations were awkward, filled with pity or condemnation of Alex. It didn't help. Then Max decided to see a therapist. It wasn't easy. He had never used such services before, believing that strong men should deal with their problems on their own. But he realized that he couldn't climb out of this emotional hole by himself. The therapy sessions became a kind of healing process. Talking to a neutral party who knew how to ask the right questions, Max began to understand his feelings and the dynamics of their friendship. He realized that envy is a complex feeling that often stems from one's own insecurity and low self-esteem. Perhaps Alex had always felt less than, less successful, and Max's successes only highlighted this for him. The therapist helped Max see his own blind spots. Perhaps he had been too focused on his own success and his desire to save Alex, that he hadn't noticed or had ignored the signs of his suffering, his bitterness. Perhaps his offer of a job, though made with the best intentions, had actually humbled Alex, putting him in a dependent position. Max understood that sometimes good intentions can cause pain if you don't consider the feelings and inner world of the other person. He also understood that he wasn't responsible for Alex's actions. Alex made a conscious choice. His betrayal was the result of his own internal problems and decisions. Max couldn't control Alex's feelings or his actions. Alex quit the company immediately after the incident. Max heard from former colleagues that he had returned to freelancing and was reportedly struggling financially again. They never spoke again, never ran into each other in the city. Alex simply disappeared from Max's life, leaving behind only emptiness and bitter memories. Sometimes, when Max saw places they used to frequent together, the same coffee shop, the same park, the streets they walked, memories of Alex would resurface with renewed force. He remembered their shared moments, carefree laughter, college adventures, deep conversations that lasted until morning, shared dreams that seemed so real. But now these memories were tinged with the bitterness of betrayal, as if a dark, destructive stain was bleeding through old photographs. It was painful, like a physical loss. He mourned not only the loss of a friend, but also the loss of a part of himself, a part of his past that was inextricably linked with Alex. The healing process was long and difficult. There was no magic pill that could instantly relieve the pain. It was a daily effort to work on himself, on his feelings. Gradually, through therapy and his own reflections, Max began to let go of the anger and resentment. He realized that holding on to these feelings was like drinking poison and hoping it would hurt someone else. He began to forgive. Forgiving didn't mean excusing Alex's actions or restoring the relationship. Forgiving meant freeing himself from the burden of the past, from the pain that was eating him from within. He learned to live without Alex. His social circle changed. New acquaintances and new friends appeared in his life. But the place that Alex had occupied remained empty. Perhaps such deep connections happen only once in a lifetime. Or perhaps he just became more careful in choosing whom he allowed into his life so closely. This experience made him stronger, but also more vulnerable. He learned to be more attentive to people, to notice not only words but also hidden emotions, fears, insecurities. He understood that behind outward well-being, there are often inner storms, and that envy is a quiet, insidious enemy that can poison even the purest relationships. One evening, when the pain was no longer so sharp, and the memories didn't cause fits of despair, Max was walking in the park. It was the same park where he and Alex used to sit on a bench, drink root beer, and laugh, dreaming of the future. The sun was setting again, casting the familiar golden light on the paths. But now he was alone. He walked up to the same bench that remembered their youthful conversations and sat down. It was quiet around him. The children had gone home, leaving only an empty playground. Only the trees rustled their leaves softly overhead. Max closed his eyes, breathed in the cool evening air, and thought about everything that had happened. About their friendship, about its end, about the lessons he had learned. Alex's betrayal was devastating, but it became a catalyst for deep changes in his own life and worldview. It taught him several incredibly important things. Firstly, true friendship, like any strong relationship, requires openness, honesty, and vulnerability. If he and Alex had been able to talk openly about their feelings, about Max's joy from success, about Alex's bitterness from failures, about his fears and envy, perhaps everything would have been different. Hiding true emotions, especially negative ones, is poison to relationships. It's important not to be afraid to be vulnerable with close people. Secondly, one person's success should not overshadow another's in true friendship. Max realized that you should not only sincerely rejoice in your friends' successes, but also be attentive to their feelings. Notice when they are struggling, when their own self-esteem is suffering. Support isn't just helping in a difficult moment. It's also being there, listening, not devaluing another's pain, even if it seems unfounded to you. Thirdly, he realized that some wounds leave scars, but those scars make you stronger. Betrayal is a deep wound. It changes you, but it also gives you experience that allows you to understand people better, to understand yourself better. Max learned to be more cautious and trusting, but he didn't become cynical. He simply began to value sincerity and reciprocity much more. And finally, he understood that forgiveness doesn't always mean returning to the past. Forgiveness is a process for oneself, to free oneself from the burden of anger, resentment, and the desire for revenge. Max didn't hate Alex. He felt sadness for what had happened, for the ruined friendship, but he knew he couldn't turn back time and couldn't force Alex to change or repent. Their shared path had ended, and that was okay. Instead, he decided to move forward. He opened himself up to new relationships, to new people in his life. He became more attentive to those who were around him, his family, colleagues who supported him after the incident. He learned to appreciate those who genuinely rejoiced in his successes without a hint of envy and who were ready to support him in difficult moments. The sun set behind the horizon, and the last golden rays disappeared. The coolness of night descended. Max stood up from the bench. He felt a slight sadness, but it was no longer the overwhelming pain that had tormented him before. It was a quiet melancholy for the past, for a lost part of himself. But this sadness didn't paralyze him. Life went on. It was full of challenges, surprises, joys, and perhaps new disappointments. But Max was ready for them. He had become wiser, stronger, more resilient. He learned to appreciate true connections, to recognize hidden currents in human relationships, and most importantly, to forgive. Not just others, but himself, for mistakes, for blindness, for trust that turned out to be misplaced. The scar from the betrayal remained, but it was a scar that reminded him of a storm he had weathered, after which dawn always comes. And Max looked at that dawn with hope and acceptance. He was ready for the new lessons life had in store for him, knowing that even the greatest pain can become a catalyst for growth.